Hi there, I'm Tessa from Tales from Outside the Classroom, and today I'm going to talk to you about using forms to create formative checks for your students. So first I'm going to head over to Google Forms. I get here by typing in forms.google.com, but of course you can get here from the regular Google Docs or Google Drive home site. So first we're going to go to a blank form. You could also start with a blank quiz, but I'm going to walk through the settings of turning your blank form into a quiz just to cover all of our bases. So I'm going to click blank, and this is what it looks like to begin with. I'm not going to go into all of the details of what you can do in Google Forms. There are many great introductory videos that will walk you through that. I'm going to focus just on using Google Forms as a formative check or a quiz. So the first thing you need to do is come over here to the settings so that you can turn on the quizzes feature. So if you start with a blank quiz, you don't have to do this, but I usually start here and just go through these steps. So first thing you need to do is to make it a quiz. And then you can decide when you want your grades to be released. So this means for students to see their grades. So I always leave it on immediately after each submission, even though I still go through and manually check the students' grades, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I just prefer kids to see immediate feedback, and this allows them to do that. Or you can have it do after manual review, which turns on email collection. With forms, especially if you're using Google Classroom, you want to turn on email collection so that the two coordinate with each other. You can choose to have your students see the questions they missed, what the correct answers are, and the point values for each. I usually leave those on by default. So coming over here to general, if you are using this with Google Classroom, or you want students to have an email with their results, which I teach primary grades, so I don't have students receive an email with their results, but I do the grading features of Google Classroom. So because of that, you want to collect email responses. And I typically limit it to one response. This means I have to sign in with Google in order to do that. This just helps my students make sure they don't do the same quiz more than once. It helps make sure there's a little security so people aren't sharing the link, especially if you have some older students. You can allow students to edit their responses after submission. So if, depending on how you set it up and what information you show to students as their feedback, you might allow them to change their answers, and you can allow them to see summary charts and text responses from their peers. I don't turn this on because I like to use it to see what my students really know. So if you're using this with Google Classroom and you want the two forms and classroom to communicate with each other, make sure you have turned on collect email addresses so that the two can talk to each other. So then click save and you're set up to go. You of course can change the features or anything like that. It does let you know that the form is collecting email addresses. If you're using this with your school domain, it often limits it to just people with that domain, and that also ensures the communication between the two is happening. I like to put whatever the title of the skill we're working on is here. And then in the form description, you can put any directions that your students might need. I use forms the most for math because math has more only one right answer kinds of questions. So it's a little easier for me to do it this way. But some of the things I talk about are easily applied in reading or other content areas. But if you are using this for a reading activity and it's not a very lengthy reading activity, the form description box is a great place to put additional information. So you can use the form description box to paste a text that the students can reference as they answer. The text shouldn't have a whole lot of formatting or be incredibly long, but you can make this, I've never seen a stopping point on the description box, so you really can make it as lengthy as you would like. You also can add an image here. So if you have an image of a text, so let's say you use the snipping tool to save a picture, or it's on Google Slides and you saved it as an image. You can upload an image here so the students can reference it. The downside is text readers can't recognize text inside an image, but it's still an option here if you're using this to assess reading, or you want to give students a piece of information for the content areas or something similar. So you can just put that here. I typically set up my quizzes in sections, so I'm going to go ahead and show you some of what I have already done there, and we'll walk through some of the question types I've already set up. So this is a quiz I have already created. I sell these in my TPT store. Right now I'm just working through the 3rd grade standards, and these are part of my digital centers. But I like to put a header that's obviously not at all necessary. As I said, I usually put the standard and then the I can statement here. I have divided my forms into sections, and I have found that this just helps keep things from being too overwhelming for students. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. When you divide it into sections, only that section is shown on the screen at one time. So when you go to the next section, then it goes into the next section of information. So I have mine set up for these as vocabulary, then some of the content knowledge before open-ended questions. It's pretty quick and simple to set things up here. You can put additional directions here. I just have this as a section title. So you can separate into sections using this. You can add a title and description box, which is what this is. You can add that here. You could also, as I said, insert an image. So if you have several texts you want to share with students, you can insert the image here before the questions. These are just multiple choice questions. I put these answer choices here. You are able to put images in for multiple choice questions. You just click this image box. So for fractions, for example, that's some of the work I will show on a different question. I have some different images of shapes divided into fractions so they can choose the correct one. So heading over to the answer key. So I have my multiple choice questions. I put it in, I click the answer key, and this is where forms become such a great formative check. So I'm going to go to the pencil to show you what it looks like. This is the feedback I have given for incorrect answers here. So I'm reinforcing the language of the definition of the word area. One of the only downsides or complaints I have with forms is you're not able to write specific feedback for one incorrect answer. So let's say somebody chose perimeter, and I wanted to say perimeter is this, area is this. It would be great if I could attach specific feedback to specific incorrect answer choices, but I usually just list all of those in this one box. You also can give feedback for correct answers, meaning it reinforces the correct answer the student has chosen. This is helpful if you have multiple choice questions and it's possible students maybe had a lucky guess or were deciding between two, so you can reinforce positively why that answer is correct here. Another nice part of forms is the tools they have available here for question feedback or answer feedback. So you can leave a link that students can reference to help them, and then you can write whatever text you want displayed for that link. So you can do something like click here to watch, to go back to the text and reread. Click here to watch this video tutorial on rocks and their composition. So you can put whatever text you would like and link to wherever you would like to reteach right in that moment. You also can click this and it directs you to link to a specific YouTube video. So you can just search or you can put in a specific URL. So if I'm creating this with math, for example, I typically have a link to like the Khan Academy video that would help teach it. And so I just paste that link here and it's ready to go. So one other thing, when you go to the feedback, so I'm going to come back here, I'm going to click the answer key. I have chosen the correct answer. It has 1 point, it defaults to 1 point. You can change the point value. So if instead of out of 10 points, you wanted to make this out of 100, you could quickly change this to 10 points by just typing it in. One, again, a downside of forms is even though I have this as a multiple choice, it does allow me to choose more than one answer. So be careful as you're working through. The answer key does allow you to choose more than one for multiple choice. I tend to use the check boxes when I want it to be more than one answer because I feel like that's how things are presented for students a little bit more. However, there definitely are multiple choice questions that they see where it tells them to choose two or something like that. I just think a fill in the bubble is a little bit more one. So the other thing is if you have two answers, it does not automatically change to 2 points. So that's something you do need to go through and manually do. So I'm going to exit out of that now that I'm done there and scroll on down. This is a short answer example. So again, it's a short answer. I've added an image in this question and I've gone through and written what the correct answer would be. Now, something that is again a limitation of Google Forms is formatting is very specific when it grades on its own. So I have 1/3 written in here as that's the correct answer. If students were to type in something like this, it would be marked incorrect if I haven't put that in there as a correct answer choice. So a little later, I will show you how I go through and manually check my students' work to make sure things aren't being marked wrong incorrectly. So all answers are marked incorrect, and then you can give feedback for all answers. Again, this time it doesn't allow you to do feedback for correct and incorrect since it is a short answer, but I usually use this opportunity to just reinforce what that answer would be, regardless of what students did. Here is an example of a multi-select. So in this direction, I just said select the shapes. I wasn't specific on how many shapes that would be, but students are able to select more than one. In my answer key, I went ahead and identified which two were correct, and I changed it to 2 points. And again, when I gave specific feedback, I tried to reinforce the incorrect mistakes students made and what the correct answer should have been. So this form is another one that I have created alongside the other one I just showed you, but this one has a few more open-ended questions, so I wanted to come down here. So these are problem-solving questions with only one correct answer, so I have them in here with their correct answer. However, this one is a long answer text. So instead of a short answer, I have it as a paragraph. So a short answer is something that I use that when it's very obviously only one answer. If students have to write a sentence, I use the paragraph option. Coming to the answer key, you can add answer feedback to reinforce what the correct answer is. However, the system is not able to grade longer responses. So it is automatically marked wrong regardless of what students write. There isn't a way to set up a specific answer key. So I typically use this opportunity to reinforce what the correct answer should be, regardless of what students have written, so that they can sort of see if their answer was right or if their answer is wrong. Over time, my students realize that I'm always going to go back through and change their answers so they don't get worried if it doesn't tell them, if it tells them their answer's wrong and it was correct. I'm going to click cancel. I made this out of 2 points because it is open-ended, but it's something to keep in mind if you have open-ended questions is you do have to go through and manually grade them. I still really enjoy using the grading features of forms, even though I still have to go through and manually grade a few things because all of the multiple choice questions are automatically graded for me. So my time grading is much quicker. So I'm going to pause and send you to a different form I have created and talk about some of the self-checking limitations. This is a review I did with my students in class, and it really demonstrates some of the limitations of Google's self-checking. So the perimeter of this shape is obviously 44 millimeters. I thought I put in every possible answer my students may have, but some students, of course, continue to confuse area and perimeter, and so she put in 44 square millimeters. I do not count that wrong because they put square in, because she obviously understood that perimeter is the addition of all four sides. So as you can see, Google marked this wrong for her. So she did not get credit for this. However, I have come in and manually changed her grade to give her 1 point for this question. So it turned it into green instead of the red it had been. So when I go to check the responses, it's really nice to be able to quickly scroll down and see how students did. And I'll show you all of the ways you can look at the responses and grade pretty quickly and simply in just a moment. But so I just come through and I say, oh, she should have gotten that correct. I will give her 1 point for that. And then I keep going. It's nice because I can quickly see, again, I already fixed this one as well, but I can quickly scroll down and see which ones I need to take a closer look at. And so it doesn't take very long. So this one I stopped at because she got it incorrect, and I see that she was incorrect in her answer, so I just keep going. This one, it marked her incorrect, but she was correct, so I changed it. And then I come down to the open-ended question in order to give her a grade. Now, let's say she had done some of it correct, but not all of it. I can change her grade to a 1 or a 2. I can give it however many points I want. And then it tells me that the edits are pending. So I'm going to change that back to a 0. I'm going to click save. And when I click save, it's going to bump me back up to the top. I'm not going to show that on the screen because this is my actual student's work. And identifiable information will be up there, but it takes you back up, and then you're able to release the scores to the students. So we will walk through that in just a moment. One last question feature I wanted to go over with you in detail before we go to all of the grading components is the response validation tool that is available. So when you make your question, you're able to click those 3 dots and come over to response validation, and it gives you this box. So this enables you to give students reminders on what the directions told them that they needed to do before they move on to the next part. So this question I made select 2, so I set up the validation to be select exactly 2. And so if students do not select exactly 2, it tells them the directions said to choose 2. You can change that to do at most or at least. So I like to use at least if the directions are select all that apply. And so if I put it on as select at least 2, and then my reinforcement would be questions that say to choose all or select all, always have at least 2 responses. I don't tend to use the at most because typically I don't have questions where I've told specifics or told students to choose 4 or something specifically like that. And then in that case, I would select exactly, but this is an option as well. So it's really nice to have built-in reminders for students on reading the directions and following through with those directions. So I'm going to head on over to the responses tab. This quiz does not have any responses, but I want to show you a couple things before we move to one that does. So this means the form is accepting responses, so you're able to close your form after a certain amount of time, so students aren't continuing to find that link and respond to it. You also can create a spreadsheet with student responses, so this is your way of compiling all of that information. For what I use forms for in my classroom for checks, I don't tend to use this tool. I use this much more when I use forms for surveys or for gathering information in other ways than I do as a data check with my students. So I'm going to head on over to another form where we can see some of the response features. To get to your responses, you just click this response button on top, and it defaults to sending you to a summary of your students' responses. This is really nice because you can right away see the average score out of your students. You can kind of see the range. So there are several students who got all of the points, many students who did well on it, a pocket of students who are obviously struggling, and many who didn't do as well. So you're able to quickly and easily see kind of a summary of all of your students' responses. Scrolling down just a little bit, after you individually go through and check students' work, which I will show you once again, at the end, if you have set it up with Classroom, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but as I said in the beginning, if you want it to work with Classroom, you can set it up as a quiz and make sure you turn on email responses. Even if you're not setting it up on Classroom, if your students have access to email, clicking this release scores button will send them an email letting them know you have manually graded it and it's ready for them. So again, this is great for older students who have emails who are checking in on their work, and especially helpful if you're using this for open-ended questions. The release score button also does communicate with Classroom though, so if you're using that, this is a way of making sure all of the scores are done and sort of ready. Moving on to the question tab. The question tab here, you're able to click through and go to a specific question to kind of see how your students did. So this is really helpful for seeing what were the common responses of my students. So what are the things I need to be reinforcing and reteaching? It's great for you to evaluate possibly that specific question was misleading or that specific skill in that question needs reteaching. So this is really helpful to sort of evaluate your test as a whole and your teaching as a whole. I'm going to go to the individual tab to look at individual student responses and just briefly touch on grading them again. But I'm going to pause here for a moment so no identifiable information is shown. I'm at that same students quiz that we already walked through. We walked through the limiting answer choices. So I'm going to go through and change their grades to what it actually should be. It takes me just a couple minutes to see. Of course, this is a red X and marked out red, just as this is originally. And then that gives me the clue I need to take a closer look at it. Coming down all the way to the bottom, I'm done grading. I change the score and it prompts me to save or discard the work. So I click save, sends me back up to the top, and I can click to release the scores. To send an email to the student to let them know they are manually done. I'm going to click discard and not save this and move on to one more thing. I have moved on over to Google Classroom to talk to you about a couple different things here to point out. Now, if you are not using forms with Google Classroom, what we walked through sends the grades to the students. You have access to everybody's grade from that individual tab or the summary tab, and you're ready to go. But one of the beauties of Google Forms is that it does work with Classroom pretty seamlessly. So wanted to walk through a couple things here before we wrap up. So this is a quiz I set up a long time ago. It shows that one student turned it in. So that student went in Classroom and clicked turned in. However, the form wasn't set up to collect email addresses. And so because it wasn't set up to collect email addresses, everything isn't syncing in the same way, and grade importing wasn't there. So I will show you that part in just a moment as well, the grade importing feature. But there's not a whole lot I can do here. However, I can come through here and write the student's grade. So if they got 9 out of 10, I can mark that there, click return, and it sends an email to the student letting them know that that's their grade. So if you are already doing it on the form, you don't necessarily need to return it to the student as well, but it's helpful to show that then it has been graded. And so you see it turned in from turned into graded. So students know their work has been graded and that is their final grade. Coming over here, this is set up where I did set up the form to communicate with email address. So when I come here, it says import grades. So instead of having to manually go through and enter each student's grade on the side, which doesn't take too long if you didn't set up your form that way, but it is nice as I can click import grades here and it will import from the form right into Google Classroom. So it saves just a couple steps. And once that's done, then you can again just click those students and their grades and click return, and your grading is done for you. So a big indicator if you set your form up in order to do grade importing is whether or not that grade importing shows here or it doesn't show here. So it just saves you the steps of having to do it manually. So I'm going to walk through quickly on creating a new form as an assignment. So you ensure grade for importing is turned on. So I'm just going to go to create and I'm going to click to create an assignment. Creating a quiz assignment means that the a blank form is automatically created in that moment. I always have my forms created before I get to this point in classroom. So I never click quiz assignment. If you do, it's fine. You can even just exit out of that one and create, attach your old one. But I'm going to click create an assignment. And then I click add. And I'm going to add from Drive because that's where my form is. I come on over to my form. And grade importing is automatically turned on. So that means the classroom and forms will communicate with each other. Another nice thing if your students are using Chromebooks is that you can turn this on. So that means kids cannot navigate away from that quiz as they are working. It forces them to finish it before they move on. Last note, it says when grade importing is on, Classroom can import grades. It automatically limits each form to one response per user, collects email addresses, and restricts responses to users in your domain. So if you don't see this, you likely aren't using Classroom with your students in your domain that your district has set up. But that's one of the nice ways of using Classroom and why I had to come into my actual classroom in order to grab this one. So you can change the point value here. So I know that that form is out of 10. So I'm changing it out of 10 and I can choose which students to assign it to and click assign. So one last key piece in setting us up assignments. So I think those are the big features of using forms with your students, using the self-grading tools. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments below. You can find me on my website, Tales from Outside the Classroom. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great day.